Is the TA02 the best ACOG model money can buy? I got a lot to cover on this optic, but first I want to give a huge thanks to Bullets and Burnouts for loaning me his personal TA02. Seriously, man, thank you. This model is a red chevron with the top-mounted RMR in the awesome forward position, of course, that I've talked about in my side versus canted video. Now let's get to the guts. This LED-powered ACOG is the only model lacking internal tritium to illuminate the reticle under nightfall, so let's cover how that affects our ACOG model choice. First off, let's clear up any confusion about tritium inside the ACOG. The classic TA31 ACOG variations have a fiber tube on the outside that allows light particles to pass through and then concentrates them inside the housing, which directs the light onto the reticle to illuminate during daylight hours. To beat a dead horse, this is adjustable a few unorthodox ways, which we'll cover later. In addition to the fiber power up top, the TA31 also has an internal tritium lamp that is basically glued directly to the reticle on the prism, which self-illuminates through radioactive decay during nightfall hours when ambient light is not available. This is the fiber tube, this is the tritium. Fiber, tritium. This scary tritium is encased in a small glass vial covered in a black adhesive on the prism side. If we flip it over, there's a small pinhole that faces towards the reticle, which is how it lets the illumination through. Now, why on earth would I touch this scary tritium vial? Well, this technology isn't scary at all. As a matter of fact, it's the same setup used on your tritium night sights used on your pistol, which I'm sure you've touched before. The glass vial in this sight post is basically the same thing glued to the prism inside the ACOG, and on the ACOG backup sights up top. If we take both the tritium vial in the ACOG and the tritium night sights and move them out of the light and into the dark, you can see them self-illuminating the same. Nothing top secret to see here. Why am I mentioning all of this? If you watched my abusive ACOG video, I had a few questions about burning the ACOG and how it affects the tritium inside. Well, ask yourself how hot you have to get the glass to a molten state where the tritium could even escape. About 1400 degrees or more, and even if this happened, it's still inside the sealed optic. You'd have to hurry and open up the ACOG, pull out the tritium, and then ingest or inhale the compound before it loses its radioactivity from traveling about a half inch through the open air. This would be a difficult task to pull off. Point being, the tritium scare isn't all it's cracked up to be, so calm the F down. On to the next ACOG, the old TA01. This model does not have any way to illuminate during daylight hours since it lacks the fiber, but it does have the internal tritium for night use, whether using the naked eye or passively under night vision. Sounds kind of boring, but we'll talk about it again later. Finally, the reason you're here, the battery-powered TA02, which does not have any internal tritium for night hours, and nor does it have the fiber tube on top. It does, however, feature a turn dial that adjusts the LED illumination for both day and night use in one convenient location. But how does it stack up against the iconic fiber model? The TA02 has 6 illumination settings with a distinct off mode in between each brightness level, easily seen and felt while turning. I actually like the simplicity of the semi-stiff knob so that it doesn't accidentally turn while using it, since the knob is on the side that will be rubbing your person and gear. I also like that the 6 settings are more to the point than something like a 12 setting brightness. If you want a rapid jump in brightness in a hurry, this does just that, if you watch the settings in relation to brightness. A majority of ACOG owners have the fiber model, which get insane bright, so let's rotate the LED brightness level next, side by side with the fiber model to compare. As I rotate the dial, I'll simply pull back the tape on the fiber to simulate a manual adjustment. Brightness setting 1 and 2 on the LED ACOG are not really visible even on this overcast day, which are more for night vision use. Now let's get to the levels that we can actually see. 3, 4, 5, and finally level 6, which in every lighting condition I use this in is way too bright, even outdoor in the sun. At the top end of brightness on both the fiber and the LED, both have major blooming issues, but rest assured, if you wondered how bright the LED gets, I honestly can't tell you which one seems brighter in person. This thing gets as bright to the eye as a red dot does, and dare I say even the EOTech. Yes, this thing is truly daylight bright. It's a slightly different type of brightness since one uses the sun reflected into your eye and the other uses artificial light from a battery. If you run fiber, you'll probably want to tape it off halfway, and I ended up running the LED model on brightness level 4, maybe 5, if and when I used the power at all. If you watched my Which ACOG reticle video about colors and lighting, you'll see that the fiber tends to be out of sync with the lighting situation that you may find yourself in, so I highly recommend watching that video after this for more context. Since the fiber can power as long as we have a sun and batteries diminish, this means you'll rely on battery power for sure, which is the major concern here. And yes, I'm looking at you, EOTech. Well, the AA is a pretty common battery and small enough to pack a few extras, so let's do some math. Good news is the average battery life on this model is 12,000 hours on setting 3. If we divide 12,000 hours by 24 hours in the day, we would get 500 days of consecutive power if left on non-stop. That's 1.36 years you can leave this bad boy on. Well, unlike a red dot or especially the EOTech, we have an etched reticle to use during daylight hours, which means you won't be running this thing that often. I wouldn't run it honestly at all unless absolutely necessary, like indoor or under night vision as a last resort. If you only had it on for 8 hours a day in your fantasy doomsday scenario, we get 3 times or 1,500 days of use. That's a whopping 4.1 years off of one battery if only ran 8 hours out of the day. Not bad at all in my opinion. Much better than what most LPVOs give you in terms of battery life, by a lot. Now that we know the LED is just as bright as the fiber model and that it has an impressive battery life, is it the better option? I can confidently say yes. When using the LED model, you can simply rotate between an off position during the daylight, and when heading into a dark environment, rotate it to a brightness level like 4 or 5 and you're good to go. This model is definitely more trustworthy to get the illumination you need when you need it. Unlike the fiber that cannot absorb enough light, the LED has a consistent brightness regardless of the ambient light around you. There are some ways to control the fiber model like the tape method. Although thin tape can still allow some light in, washing out a true black reticle, and tends to get gunked up or stuck to itself while adjusting, causing replacement situations. This doesn't mean you need to abandon the iconic RCO. Because the fiber needs some makeshift control measures, you can upgrade your tape to a Schaefer Machining fiber cover for $45. This device simply snaps into place by sliding from the front for retention and then clipping down the rear to the ACOG. This allows you to slide the cover from a fully closed position to an open position to control that reticle brightness. Much easier to reach over and slide it to that exact brightness you're looking for than messing with any type of tape. If you hard press it down, it slides resistance free. Or you can soft press while sliding to give you a notched adjustment. I wasn't sure how well this would hold up to bumping, but as I tried to knock it off from multiple angles, it seemed to stay on just fine. If you hit it precisely from underneath the rear, you could knock it loose, but you'd still have to slide it off from the front. Overall, I tried some random impacts to knock it loose and it held very well. You could add a piece of tape to hold it down even better since the slider can still function under the tape. The only nitpicky thing I could see as a downside is the possibility of getting debris inside the track, which may cause slider blockage. These small pebbles or possible sand or dirt could require some cleaning, but this snaps off so easy it's not a big deal. Another point brought up to me was about using a kill flash in conjunction with this part. For those who use a kill flash, know that it will block the front of the Schaefer device from seating on the front objective housing. On top of that, this ECOS model ACOG had a front iron sight that also blocks the part from seating and snapping down. You could pull out the kill flash and cut a notch in line with the fiber cover so that you can use both together, which is totally doable. This definitely helps control the day brightness issue, but this doesn't solve our lack of lighting during night hours. I had a gentleman reach out about his fiber model solution to dim the reticle at night. To create a more thorough video, I decided to pick one up and see if it did just that. I'm a firm believer in helping people who try to create innovative solutions to problems. The REM, or Reticle Enhancement Module, is a clamshell device that houses a small LED light that shines directly onto the fiber optic when it most needs it, at night. A simple interlocking joint up top, and 2 screws at the front and rear of the optic, and voila! Turn the dial to the brightness setting of your desire, just like the TA02. The cool note is that it uses a cooler temperature light instead of a warm light, so that a red reticle does not turn more orange-like, and a green reticle does not turn into a yellow lime color. I'm not sure of the material used for the plastic, but the light seems to be potted into place very well, and the internal structure does feel very solid on the ACOG. No wiggle, no flex, but I was still skeptical. Stay right there, back for a sec. Ready? Hits. Get right there, see it? Still works fine. So, let me try up close, ready? Yeah. Right against that rock. Oh! So check this out. To be fair, this just popped off, but really it broke here, but this would not happen if it was on the ACOG right there. But check the light. This thing is seriously durable. On the optic, that wouldn't have happened because the optic would have protected it, so that's unfair.
Yeah, the optic would.
So let's shoot it and see what happens. Hitting solid rock didn't phase the device, and honestly, it feels more sturdy on the optic than when it does off. Not being satisfied with this test, we decided to take a volunteer shot to see what it's made of. Ooh, nice. Let's see what this did. That was a good shot. You know what's funny about that?
Half of it's gone.
Yeah, but you know what's funny about that? If you literally just turn it.
Yeah, it's still gonna come on.
So literally it would still hold on to the ACOG with the back. Turn that knob real quick. And it still works. So that's funny. So that goes to show how durable this actually is. The only weak point I would say is technically that the front is just flimsy, but it would be on the optic.
Yeah, exactly.
So, although the impact did take a leg with it, the LED light still works and was able to clamshell back onto the optic with only the rear screw available. I added a little tape to the top as a precaution and tightened down the rear screw and was able to put in some work with this module. If you want to convert your fiber model over for a super low cost, this is one way to do it. Comparing the brightness of this device to the actual LED ACOG is not exactly the same. First off, half of the fiber is still exposed to sunlight, so even with the LED off, the reticle just gets enough light in some scenarios that it kind of takes on the dark tone of the reticle and can wash out like I show in my Which ACOG reticle video. To get a solid black reticle, simply tape off the exposed fiber and let the LED do the work when you need it. Just remember, by taping off the front half of the fiber, the LED is no longer as bright on its max setting without assistance from the sun. This LED is not as strong as the TA02 model. If you don't care about having a black reticle during the day, then just ditch the half tape method, but at night I noticed while running the LED, I could see the light illuminated the fiber optic wire. Yeah, it looked pretty cool, but what if this could give away your movement or position? I did take some steps back and could not see it with the naked eye after about 5 to 7 yards, so not bad. But under night vision, it's a different story. With the LED on, we could see not only the fiber glow, but during movement, we could see it even easier. In urban lit scenarios, it's a bit harder to see, but when I go back into darker shadows, void of any light, the fiber is definitely noticeable out to distances upward of 50 yards. This means you may want to leave the tape off during daylight, but put it back on during nightfall when using the REM device. One last thing to mention before you buy this unit is that it's only compatible so far with the stock ACOG mount. The clamshell design gets blocked by higher mount designs like the American Defense and the Geisley. There is a version without the front legs that excludes the front screw, but the issue is how tall the sides of the mount ride, which is what prevents the clamping to fit correct. While we're talking about mounts, I had a question about the Unity COG mount that I did a video on using this TA02 ACOG. This battery housing that protrudes from the right side will block the ability to use the offset RMR. The new ScalarWorks mount has the same problem, so both will require you to rotate the mount 180 degrees and run the RMR canted to the left side. For once, right-handed shooters like me get The best solution is to run the Arasaka mount behind the ACOG to dodge the battery compartment, or in front of the ACOG. This could block the battery cap if too close to the ACOG, so choose your canted mount wisely. After all this information, I hate to tell you that most of this doesn't even matter because the TA02 has the best possible position for a top-mounted dot. Why worry about the illumination settings, the battery life, or the ability to see passively under night vision when you can solve it all with this ACOG design? So far, so good. If you watched my Which ACOG reticle video, you'd know that the TA31 fiber model basically resorts to the tritium to illuminate at night, which I actually think is usable during night hours or in city lit areas, and surprisingly under night vision since it's dim enough to avoid blowing out the reticle. The fiber, however, can fluctuate walking under light sources like a street light blowing out the reticle. The Schaefer device would close this off from happening, but this is where the TA02 really shines. I said setting 1 and 2 earlier in the video weren't visible during the day, but that's because they're for passive night vision use. This model for some reason was way easier to see through passively, but here you can see the reticle on all settings passively. 1, 2, 3, 1. Going past 1 in total darkness is a bad idea, and setting 2 can be good for urban lit areas that fluctuate in brightness. I included a lot of time on tritium because I wondered myself if I would miss it for low light and passive night vision use, since this LED model does not have it, and you'll have to rely on setting 1 to achieve this same brightness level. Aside from the fact it uses up small amounts of battery life over time, probably 8 years of usage off 1 battery on this mode, I think I'm willing to let go of the tritium. Back to the REM device that helped assist a dim reticle at night isn't really necessary under passive night vision use. The tritium works just fine on these non-LED models, and here you can see that on setting 1, this REM device blows out the reticle, rendering it unusable. Now, unless you're in the prone and think you'll never have to move your sight picture, I suggest that you don't ever rely on passive aiming with the ACOG. One slight movement and you lose your sight picture. Why on earth would you use this anyway when you have the best possible position for the top dot, which solves all of these night vision issues? It was meant to be, and this alone is the most important selling point. After ruining my TA01 to test this position, it was nice to have the real thing so that I could actually practice shooting between the top dot and the actual reticle that can be seen through the crystal clear glass you deserve. We all know that this forward position is absolutely superior to the rear position when using night vision. Complemented with an SRO, you get a floating dot at the perfect height to speed up those hits. Performance goes to the SRO for sure, since it comes into your sight picture faster and stays in view while moving around much better. You definitely get spoiled running the SRO up top, but the smaller RMR works just fine if you're looking for more durability. The RMR is the safe route if you're really going to beat this thing up, but occasionally you may have to find it in a pinch. Surprisingly, this is also better for a day 1x function as well. By having the forward dot, it sits in a familiar position of a standard dot on the upper receiver. And the ACOG under mimics not only the position of a magnifier, but also the same short eye relief that red dot magnifier people brag about and enjoy so much. What's better about the ACOG combo is that you don't have to take your hands or eyes off the target to switch between the 1x and the magnification with this setup. No throw lever on the LPVO, no switch lever to take up rail space adding weight, and no moving magnifier to take up peripheral view or add extra weight to the upper receiver. Switching between the top dot and 4x on target was seamless, and eliminates the risk of bumping the top dot on your helmet or your face. I ran multiple days using both the 1x only at multiple distances and the 4x only. Some drills I ran alternating between the two depending on what my judgment was to get the fastest hits based on my distance from target. I can positive ID with the ACOG or take a shot, or find the threat with the ACOG and then slap a hit using the RMR up top. This by far was the destined location of the RMR position on the ACOG, and by default, this alone is the main reason I would actually recommend this ACOG over the other models. I honestly wouldn't mind any of them as long as they had this position, including the TA110 if you need that longer eye relief.
I'm out. I don't have a pistol mag with me. That sucks.
Between the SRO and the RMR, I think that the SRO has less distortion around the edge than the RMR, and also has a bigger field of view, which is amazing. Using it, I tend to find the dot much faster, but maybe I'm just crazy. I'm completely ready to let go of this rear position after running the TA02 model. It's had its time and the future is now. I've ran this rear SRO for quite some time, but I'm telling you that every ACOG should have a new forging with the forward position included. I'd probably run this TA01 model more if it had the front dot position like this, or even a TA31 with a taped off fiber as long as it had a forward dot. Since I've been in love with my TA01-02 model, I think I'll be exclusively running this model from here on out. Finding targets and positive ID is pretty awesome to have with the 4X, and the top dot inside 100 yards is much better even if you're used to the rear dot position like me. And by the time you need the magnification to engage out to distance, you'll be using the 4X with a BDC anyway. Now before you bust out that phone in a hurry to order one, you need to accept the flaws that come with this optic before you commit. The best way I can think to be fair is to whip out some more diagrams to wrap up this video. If we take all three models and plot out the features on another radar diagram, we can say that the best illumination goes to the TA02. It has a setting for every lighting scenario with an off switch in between, and is the only model that has a brightness that can withstand white light usage indoor like a red dot. Setting 1 covers night vision passively, even though you'll be using the top dot most likely. And since I run my reticle black almost exclusively during the day, just turn the frickin' thing off and you get a ridiculous amount of battery light. Even though if every model had a forward dot position, you're going to be using battery power anyway for the RMR up top. The TA31 illumination is too random to control, which is why I gave the win to the TA02, as well as realizing that having a black only reticle in the TA01 may restrict you defeating white light scenarios if need be. As far as 1X, again the forward position wins on the TA02, since it's more natural to present in a forward dot position and doesn't hit your helmet nor face. In the night vision category again, the clear winner is the TA02 position. I honestly can't even go back to force the other models to work passively because having to change your head position to avoid nod contact gets old. I'd rather repeat the same head position whether day or night for consistency and familiarity. As of now, this LED model seems to be spanking the others, but we know there's some cons to making the switch. The last three categories to determine start with the weight. The original TA01 is the simplest of the three and comes in at 10.5 ounces without a mount. I did it this way because different websites like to give you this weight instead of with the factory mount, which comes in at 4.2 ounces. Together we have a whopping 14.7 ounces using the stock mount. You can lighten this up with different mounts like the Geisley mount coming in at 3.3 ounces, or even more with this American Defense QD mount at only 2.8 ounces. The classic TA31 is surprisingly 10.7 ounces, about the same. So with the stock mount we get 15 ounces exactly. Because this LED model includes the extra illumination dial and the battery housing adding material, clearly it's the heaviest of the three. Without a mount it weighs 13.5 ounces, the heaviest of the three at a total of 17.8 ounces. Oh wait, let's not forget an extra half ounce for the battery, making it 18.3 ounces in the stock configuration. This is getting into LPVO territory, but hey, using this American Defense mount keeps it down to 16.3 ounces, barely heavier than an EOTech with a Unity riser at 13.9 ounces. Imagine adding an 11-ounce magnifier behind this, totaling almost 24 ounces in comparison, or even upward of 25 to 30 ounces running LPVOs. Let's add the top RMR weight of 1.9 ounces to each model to get our final totals. Clearly the TA01 is the winner, so going with the LED model will add some weight. Aside from a lightweight dot and a magnifier combo, this is the lightest setup with a dot and some magnification that you're going to get. It doesn't really feel heavy mounting it to the rear, which seems to lighten it up in person. After all, you'll want to get this short eye relief back as far as you can to get an instant sight picture upon presentation. And if you noticed in this video, this particular chevron is missing the side mill ranging lines that you can get in the fiber model. If we compare our reticle selection next, the TA31 fiber model has a ton of options to choose from if you're very specific about design or caliber, and the TA01 is limited to only a crosshair. The TA02 at least has a crosshair, a simplified chevron, and a horseshoe dot, which has the most amount of ranging features of the three, so it's probably the best all-around reticle for this LED model. Reminder that with this model, you're also limited to 556 and 300 blackout reticles only, and if you're going 308, you'll have to get the TA110 LED version. The TA31, being the most popular model, clearly has the reticle support you may need, turning you away from this LED model. The last attribute and the reason this video got pushed back is after my ACOG durability video, I had some people send me messages about damaged ACOGs, including mystery fragments in their view and turrets that would not zero. Both a TA31 model and a TA02 model were sent back to the manufacturer and I awaited results. Supposedly it was adhesive issues in the prism, with no way to know if it was that way from the beginning, during shipping, or during storage at the retail facility. They both got replaced and have working optics now. On top of that, Mr. Guns and Gear had a TA02 that lost its ability to illuminate over the years. Some say it could be the battery bounce, even though the compartment has a sleeve to reduce battery flop, and the battery housing is sealed and waterproof, but his was also replaced as well. Thanks Mike for the info, by the way. Having wiring inside in general is already a possible point of failure, so part of me feels hesitant to recommend this model. For instance, when I was turning the dial, I noticed that the knob could be pulled slightly out from the body, and I didn't want to risk any damage since this one was on loan. Very odd, and I definitely wanted to just pull on this thing to see if it popped off for you guys. One of you TA02 owners, let me know in the comments if you've ever popped this off. This TA02 is a gamble in this regard, although I personally will admit, I rarely use the illumination during the day, and again, this top dot solves most of the illumination needs anyway. The Old Faithful fiber model doesn't have any of this fancy stuff to risk durability concerns, except one small point to mention. The TA31 does have the risk of the fiber breaking and or cracking, so I cannot rank it as high as the Old Faithful TA01. We know on our chart that the TA01 is the simplest design and willing to take a beating. No! Simple, strong, and effective. I totally trust this optic in the durability department, and I often think I'd be happy with just the TA01 and a forward dot on top. Regardless of the TA02 having the highest risk for breakage, I think that the benefits you gain with this model outweigh this durability risk. After all, I still have a black reticle and the top dot. To help you decide if this model is worth the switch, or for your very first ACOG purchase, feel free to screenshot these final diagrams. If your main concern is durability, then the simple TA01 may be your huckleberry, especially if you don't need the better dot placement for NV or 1X. Likewise, the TA31 has this problem as well, but reticle selection, nostalgia, or the main reason we all love this model, never needing battery power to work, may help you decide on this one alone. In my opinion, experience, and lust for practical versatility, the TA02 shines in the right categories, which is illumination control and the top dot position for NV use and a pretty awesome 1X. This is probably the most versatile ACOG model to get, even though the other models are perfectly fine if you already have one. I'm going to be running this version as my main from here on out until they finally decide to make the ultimate ACOG that has all of the best features in one. I'm thinking the TA34-D sounds like a pretty good model name. And imagine all the possibilities with the newer Trijicon dots up top or to the side on a model like this. As a big thank you to all 19,000 subscribers who stick around, I went against my intuition and bought an Elkin DR, which seems to be the main rival of the TA02 ACOG, and I think you'll like what I have in store. Links to the devices used in the video are in the description, as well as a link to my good friend Dennis, who made the sick intro riff for this video. See you all on the next one.
Or this. Whatever that other part is.